What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little thing we like to call the Middlekauff Mailbag at John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs and get your questions answered here on the show. I got a lot of them. So, again, I say it all the time. If you have DM'd me and I have missed your question, sometimes you got to re-ping me. You know, getting married, I got so many DMs, and it's not as fluid as it usually is in Instagram. Naturally isn't exactly like an Excel spreadsheet where it's easy to kind of sort. So I kind of got to do it manually, which, that's the toughest thing you got to do all day. I don't get to complain, but I know a lot of you guys, if you're going to spend effort or energy to shoot me a DM with a question, I do want to try to answer it. So just sometimes re-ping me. We will start with Lauren. Am I the only one who thinks the conversation around Deion becoming a coach in the NFL is a bit ridiculous? All the credit in the world for turning around an embarrassing program in just one season. But two. First season didn't go that well. But I hear you. No shot. I enjoyed watching Colorado. But the idea of him taking over an NFL head coaching job seems kind of nuts. Schematically, he doesn't bring much to the table. And I think most of his success in college comes from his ability to recruit top talent, though his fame and notoriety. Plus, I find it hard to imagine NFL players responding well to his leadership style. Do you think this is just a media-driven conversation, or do you actually see real value in hiring him as a head coach? Also, could that affect Shedor's draft status? No. I don't think Deion's impact Shedeur, people are going to draft him because I think he can play. I think the Deion impact's a little overrated. Unless he pulled an Archie Manning, but just like him around, I don't think it has much, if any, impact. I would say that Deion shot that down. Deion had a talk with Jerry Jones, who he's known for 30 plus years, right? When he signed there in 95, 96. Deion says he has no desires to coach in the NFL. He does not want to do that. And I forget, exactly what he said, but like part of it, like what he brings to the table is the impact. And if you watch, I follow Colorado on social media and stuff, like his impact and the stuff he likes talking about is much closer to, I don't know, the Sabins and he played for Bobby Bowden. I envision him being a college head coach for a long time. And I actually think they were one of the more fascinating teams to watch this season. Now with Shedeur and Travis gone, like if they are good, honestly, if they go 7-5, they win 8 games. I think he is getting a job in the SEC. I mean, I would guess, unless Colorado just implodes, which I don't think they're going to do. He brought in Marshall Faulks now as running back coach. Their D-line was way better. Well, he hired Warren Sapp. My guess is he's in the SEC in a couple years. So yeah, I just he pushed back against that. What's he supposed to do? Not pick up Jerry's call? But I envision him. I mean, he get a job at Florida or Florida State or LSU or something next couple years. Pays him $14 million a year. And he can pay all of his buddies on his staff huge cash. So I envision him as a college coach for a while, which I give him a lot of credit for doing this. It's one thing, the power of coaching your sons, which essentially I would put Travis Hunter under that umbrella too, and that's the way they talk about it. So Travis, Shedor's his son's quarterback, Shiloh. Now that they're gone, they're all gone. For him still to have the passion, and if he's going to do this, and if he does it for a long time, he does not need to be doing this. Like, he's pretty rich. So I give him a lot of credit if he just does this for a long time, because he's giving back to a game that, let's face it, a lot of super famous rich people don't necessarily do it. And I don't blame anyone if they just want to retire and hang out, but a lot of people could bring a lot of value, and they just refuse. So any of these coaches or excuse me, any of these Hall of Fame super rich players that either go into front offices or coaching in college or the pros, like that's like their love of the sport runs deep. My podcast, your podcast is a lifeline while trucking. My question for the pod is how long do bust quarterbacks bounce around the league till they just disappear? I feel like the dust has settled, and only people who are going to have a decent career is Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Uh, there's always a curveball. There's always a guy that's been a backup for a while that gets an opportunity that excels, right? I mean, it's happened historically. Kurt Warner is the best example, who was like a fringe nobody and then got his chance in his late 20s. Rich Gannon, going back to the late 90s, is another guy that bounced around. Jim Plunkett was a guy who bounced around forever and then won a Super Bowl with the Raiders. So I think you just never know. Like, could Zach Wilson, or I almost said Mac Jones. I don't even believe that. But Zach Wilson's probably a bad example. I mean, who knows? He's getting backup jobs now. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, it's very unlikely. So we could go through a period of time where it does not happen. But I would agree that where we sit here right now, and Sam Darnold like has to play well to sustain this. Like Baker Mayfield's a starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. Baker Mayfield's a really good player. Like he's done this a couple years now, and he had one really good year in Cleveland. Like Baker Mayfield is a good player. Like you can't even argue. Darnold, I'm pro Darnold, but it's if he has a bad year this year, I mean, we could look back, and it happens sometimes in sports. Like outlier used to happen a lot in the steroid era. Like there'd be a random dude that would hit like 58 bombs. Be like, where'd that come from? It's like Mexico, horse steroids. Humble Chiefs fan. It's clear the Eagles are on a whole nother level with that ass whooping served up in the Super Bowl. My question is, how long do you think the Eagles can keep this train rolling? We saw them offload some older defensive players. Slay, Brandon Graham retired, but have seemingly already drafted their replacements that are playing out of their minds year one, as we saw. On top of Vic seemingly unlocking Jalen Carter. They locked up Barkley and have all the other notable offensive pieces under contract for the foreseeable future. I think the limit of this Eagles dynasty window is completely dependent on how long the Eagles front office is willing to keep the gang together. Yeah, I mean they're gonna be really really good. Uh, I actually think the only question mark this upcoming season is just the guy calling plays. I don't know exactly Kevin Patolo. If I'm saying his name wrong and he's listening, I apologize, Kevin. But listen, that's a pretty big transition. Uh, Felt like Kellen had a pretty good feel for running the ball and Jalen, and just managing those personalities with Nick. But like the offense, I mean, there's just a lot of pressure in that city. And it's like it's one of the places where there's not like a huge celebratory, you don't just get a free year. Like if they start 1-2, people would be freaking out. So it's a unique place with the pressure, but there's no the talent on their roster is just immense. And like you said, well, they lost some depth. Darius Slay's still a solid player, but you weren't going to pay him whatever $15 million. So I would imagine they draft another corner, right? They will need to. They'll draft defensive linemen, but like that's Vic's kind of his go-to thing, the ability to coach those guys up. And offensively, even if the OC is a little bumpy, their team is just so stacked. And here's the thing: when Jalen gets a little off kilter, which he's been known to do, just hand the ball to 26. It's like, well, who's blocking for him? I don't know. Probably the best offensive line in the league. Like that's what they have in their back pocket. When the passing game gets weird, hand the ball off, and then hand the ball off again, and then hand it off again. So my guess is the Eagles will draft defensive linemen. Wouldn't shock me if they drafted a running back at all. Not super high, but like in the third round, just to give Barkley some blows and have like get that young run. This running back class is so deep. Have him around Saquon Barkley, let him teach him. So yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles are gonna be good, man. I do. I think the Lions, when they're fully healthy, are going to be good. I think the Vikings are just one of the great wild cards just because the quarterback. I don't feel comfortable saying like, yeah, they're just right there. Like JJ McCarthy, can he just go toe to toe with the Lions and the Eagles and the Rams? I don't think I wouldn't write off the Niners just yet. Packers too. I mean the NFC's it's not as star studded as the AFC with Mahomes and Josh and Lamar, but the teams are good. I mean the teams. Let's face it, the teams in the NFC I feel like are better than the teams in the AFC depth wise. I mean the Steelers made the playoffs. I think the Packers are better than the Steelers, right? And that Bronco team, like now those teams are going to be better, but like the Vikings were the fifth seed, the Rams were the sixth. I mean the Rams were the fourth seed. Who was the? It was the. Who am I missing? Packers, the Vikings, and am I missing a team? Tampa. I don't know. My brain's not working. It's crazy. You just start some of your details. You're like, well, who? Tampa played. Yeah, they played them. They played the Rams. I am missing a team though, because the Rams played the Eagles, so that's the 2-7. The Vikings played the Rams. That was the 4-5. And I guess the Rams, the Packers. It's crazy. I feel like, do I even follow this league? Let's do a quick check. Who am I missing? Oh, the Commanders. Tampa. Yeah, the Commanders. I forgot about the Commanders. My bad. It's funny when you haven't been in the mix, you get forgot about. They won't be forgotten about because they're going to be good again. The older I get, the more practical I become. I don't have that third beer. I gravitate to my briefs instead of boxer briefs. I don't want my team to always make the sexy draft pick or free agent pickup. How do teams decide whether they swing for the fences versus the safe depth pick? Thanks, John. That's a good question. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on that. I think you allocate resources, whether it's free agency. It's like, would we be willing to go in on this? And then sometimes there's a bidding war and you just pull out. I think I saw, the Panthers were all in on Milton Williams. And then they got to a number and they're just like, yeah, we're out. And the Patriots went to a place that they weren't willing to go. And I got to be honest, like, if I was the Panthers, like, I'm not paying Milton Williams $26 million. I'm just not doing it. The Patriots, you could argue that, and I like Milton Williams. That contract's crazy. You're giving a guy, I think they gave him $50 million guaranteed. He's never played more than 50% of the snaps. He had like one big breakout year. Like that's sometimes you get money. Like I'll go back to this guy, McGlinchey. I remember when the Broncos a couple years ago gave McGlinchey $50 million guaranteed. I'm like, that's insane. But no one's ever said, you know what? McGlinchey only plays 50% of the snaps. No, McGlinchey was a full-time starter for 5 years on the San Francisco 49ers on teams that were winning. So it's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to pay him that much money to be my starting right tackle. Hell, I wouldn't even want him as a starting right tackle. But, like, I get it. Milton Williams, like, well, can you carry us? Can you get 9 sacks in a year? Can you be a Pro Bowler? Like, these aren't just unknowns. They're, like, unlikely. So, yeah, I think there's probably a balance between, like, drawing a line in the sand in terms of free agency or trades. Like, there are probably other teams. I heard of a really good team in the AFC, a really good team that was talking about Laramie Tunsil. But guess what Houston told them? They had to pay way more than Washington had to pay for Laramie Tunsil, which I totally understand. Why? Because we'll probably see in the playoffs. Hell, we might play in the regular season. We play you every year, right? We'd have to go through you. So that team's like, well, we can't do this. It was much easier for the Commanders, right, who probably paid, I don't know, 30% less to pull the trigger. Easy move for them. For the other teams, like, we really need this guy, but holy shit, that's a lot to ask. So I think the more confident you are with your operation, I think the more patient you are in some of these situations. But there's not a right or wrong way to do things because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I bet there were people thinking that Howie gave you, wait, you're going to give Saquon a multi-year deal last year? I bet there were people around the league that were like, that's a stupid deal. That's not going to work out. When it comes to college basketball and March Mania, one thing is for sure. Nothing's for sure. Upsets, buzzer beaters, Cinderellas, top seeds going home early. It's all going to happen. Bet the unexpected. Every upset, every day with DraftKings Sportsbook. With live betting, exclusive content, promos, and parlays, DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. Ready to make your first bet? Check out matchups and pick a team to win. It's that simple. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN, that's J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Hey, John. Got a mailbag question about players, injuries, and their recovery. It always amazes me how quickly guys in the NFL can recover. While I was at college, university in the UK, I played D-line and linebacker for the team. God, you guys had a little uni, as we call it in the UK. I didn't know you guys play American football in Europe, in college? Even though it's probably the least competitive level of American football you can play anywhere in the world, and guys are nowhere near NFL size, injuries are still a huge problem. After I got a pick, I got tackled by one of my own linemen, and I fractured my kneecap and completely tore my MCL. This took me out about a year to recover from, and then I re-injured it when I came back for my final year. Yet NFL guys will have similar injuries and recover in half the time. Is it purely that NFL guys have insane genetics which allow them to recover, or is it because of the top-level medical treatment they receive? Would love to hear your thoughts. Well, I would say genetically, pro athletes are the cream of the crop, right, in terms of athletic genes. So I've always been blown away by guys in college basketball and definitely the NBA that have these ankle sprains where it looks like it blow out their ankle. I mean, LeBron's king of this, and then will just come back. So their body can contort in levels in ways that 99% of humans cannot. By far, their medical treatment. When I hear of friends that tore an Achilles skiing or tore their ACL playing pickup softball or pickup basketball or whatever, they go to treatment, like a quote unquote rehab, maybe once or twice a week. I remember my dad tore his patella tendon when I was like, I was probably 13, 14 years old. And I remember he'd go to rehab a couple times a week. I mean, it was bad. And this was, mid 90s. The recovery on bad knee injuries. And this guy's just, my dad was a farmer, used to like play a little golf and tennis, in his older age. But after this happened, it kind of set him back. And he definitely was never the same. And as he got older, his knee was really bad. He probably needed a knee replacement. But like, I remember him going to just being a kid, and he'd like take me to practice or whatever. I just drive around with him, and he'd go to do the rehab. And I remember going with him a couple times, but it was like once or twice a week. When you get injured in the NFL, you go to treatment, and you hear coaches use that word treatment every single day, multiple times a day, and you bring it home to you. So I think the rehabilitation process of an injury of a normal human, let's just pick a number. Let's just say it's at 10. The rehabilitation process for a professional athlete in the NFL is like 1,000 in terms of how meticulous. Now, it doesn't mean everyone follows it, but like the serious people that take their job seriously and want to get back. And sometimes younger athletes recover faster. But like an older guy it could make or break his career, I mean, probably will lose sleep over it. I mean, look at Rodgers last year for his Achilles. Like, he took it really, really seriously. If I tore my Achilles, like I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. in middle of the night to get treatment at my house. So I think that's a huge, huge part of it. Obviously, their bodies are better. And the other thing is, if you if you get injured, let's just say you're a 38-year-old playing pickup hoops and you tear your Achilles or have a bad knee injury, like what's your body type? Like you got a couple kids, you got a dad bod, you're in decent shape. Like when you get hurt as an NFL player, like you do have a body of armor that you've built up training, right? So it's like you are more physically your ability to take uh, a hit that might have actually been way worse. Like sometimes whenever you play that game with like your buddies, if the hole parted like the Red Sea, could you gain 5 yards? It's like, yeah, well, some people could. But what happens when Dre Greenlaw meets you in the hole? What happens when Jalen Carter picks you up and throws you to the ground? Because when that happens to Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley or whoever, like they just get back up. But if that happened to you or me or just normal humans, you would probably shatter bones. So, I mean, there are probably a lot of hits these guys take that would cause injuries for people that aren't training at their level. I mean, the physicality of the NFL is. I've only been on the field of an actual Sunday game a couple times in my life. And I've spent obviously a lot of time before that at practices. I mean, seeing live drills. Uh, I was on the field in college at Fresno State, but the NFL is a different animal. And I remember thinking, like, it's crazy more people don't get injured, to be honest with you, with the speed and violence of these guys. Do you see Spytek and Carroll going Jeanty since Carroll loves running ball backs? I prefer Will Campbell or defensive line. Like I said, I someone hit me up recently because not critical, but I'm just acknowledging he's 5'8". So how often does a 5'8" player go in the top 10? And someone said, well, there was once a guy that people questioned his body, and it turned out he was a Hall of Famer, and it was Derrick Henry. Was he too tall? I said, well, uh, I think teams would rather lean, is the guy too big than too small? Now, I do think Derrick Henry was a fair comparison, or excuse me, a fair, um, like the scouting community, because he was so tall and upright and he played at such a power program, it was a very unique evaluation, right? I don't think Jeanty is that complicated. He's a really good player, but he did play at a smaller school and he is small. So I do think there were just questions. There are questions with basically like every prospect ever. If I was the Raiders, I 100% would not pick him because I would just use my second or third round pick on a running back. I would pick the best player on the board, whether that's Mason Graham, whether that's whoever that is, assuming that some of the, Travis Hunter's off the board and Dual Carter's off the board. The Rams running back has been third in rushing behind only Saquon and Derrick Henry. He seems to have a fumbling issue. Do you think the Rams should entertain moving on from him, seeing that he's going seeing as they seem to be going all in? Sometimes you got to slow down when you're reading. That's life lesson to myself. Some of you younger folk won't remember this, but there was once a running back with the New York Giants named Tiki Barber, and he had a fumbling problem. And I forget exactly what they did. Older Giants fans would know this, but they like emphasized it hardcore, and he felt like he turned it around, and he stopped fumbling as much. And I think that it is a teachable, unless he like lacks grip pressure, that you can do some sort of like measuring, use some device to measure that like he'll never be able to hold on to the ball at whatever the average level is to sustain decent ball security. I do think it's a teachable thing. I would just have him, in some of it's not the jugs machine, but it's that device where the things like hit bounce off you. I would constantly be hitting it. Anyone that watched the program, um, you can basically just you carry football everywhere you go. Obviously the program you carry it to class, but there's a famous scene where they hit it out when he's falling asleep in the lecture hall, which is a great scene. and then they're all falling down the lecture hall stairs, and then somehow he ends up under the table where the professor is, and he comes out with the ball. But I would not get rid of Kyren Williams just because I would coach it up. Why am I paying Sean McVay $20 million and his assistants seven figures? His coordinators a lot of money. Let's coach these guys up, baby. With the Cooper Kupp situation, they couldn't restructure his contract and just let him get some money back. Sometimes human beings want out of business with whoever they're in business with. Why do people break up? They didn't want to be in the Cooper Kupp business anymore. Obviously, the money factored in, but they just were over it. They were over depending on an older player who was breaking down. Basically, I think the easiest way to look at it is they looked at him like a stock and they just went, we're selling our stock. We're selling our shares. We're out. Obviously, there's a human element to this. They like the guy. Clearly, he meant a lot to them turning around the franchise when Sean got there. Didn't he win the Super Bowl MVP? High level guy in his peak, was incredibly productive. Won the Triple Crown. But sometimes you have to make decisions where you go, we're just out. We're just out. Would they have had him back for $5 million? Probably. But we just saw like he got more than that. So it's a tough part of the business. You know, it's weird. It became so emotional, but Andy Reid won a ton of Super Bowls with Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney has been one of the more consistent players in the NFL. And they just traded him. And no one said anything. And then Andy Reid comes out and been like, this sucks. We didn't want to do this, but we got a cap, and it's the shitty part about the business. And it doesn't become one thing with McVay, which, listen, I appreciate it. It becomes, and he's so emotional, and the Rams, he's such good friends with media people, Mike Silver and Schrager, and they're all talking. It becomes like this big hoopla. It's like, yeah, they just fucking cut him. They didn't want him on the team. Andy Reid's been doing it for 25 years, and we don't make that big a deal with these things. Like, yeah, we just couldn't pay him anymore. I love the guy. Sean McVay can just never do that. Like, love the guy, we're just not paying him anymore. Becomes like, well, this and that. It's the NFL. Happens all the time. Eagles just won a Super Bowl. Darius Slay's our starting corner. They're like, yeah, we're out. Been married myself for 15 years, and it's been great. Congrats on the wedding. When an NFL player retires at the end of a season with years remaining and guaranteed money on his contract, what happens to that money? Does he still get paid? Does that money still count against the team's salary cap in the next season? Just curious how it works and how GMs might manage that situation. Well, if the money's already been paid out, remember Tony Romo, when he had the back injury, then he ended up retiring, his contract was still on the books for the Dallas Cowboys the following season because it's like a trade or cutting a player. All the money that you would owe them accelerates. Mike Brown's like, well, you do contracts like us, you don't have to worry about it. But Andrew Luck is a good example. Retires out of the blue. The Colts could have asked for money back from the signing bonus, and I think would have manipulated the salary cap a little bit with getting money back, but they let him keep, I forget the number, it was like $20 million, and they took a salary cap dead money hit. So just because you retire, Drew Brees, same thing, doesn't mean the money just goes away. It is the equivalent if you have set up their contract. If a guy retires and he's just like a free agent, and his contract had just run out and it had all been accounted for in the contract or the cap, no issue. But I think it happens a lot where a guy retires and happened to Brady. Brady's impact was still on the books. So, yeah, it just gets accelerated like cutting a player or trading a player. Question for the bag. If you were a coordinator in the NFL, which side of the ball would you coach? Let me say this. Any coaches listening to this, what they do and their knowledge of football, I could never do. Never thought I could, never desired to. But in a lot of respect for the effort, the hours, and just the intensity of that profession. It is hard. At least for the people that are solid and good at it. A lot of people faking their way through, making a lot of money, stealing. But if I was coaching a side of the ball, it would 100% be offense. To be a defensive coach, I think you got to be like, if life would have gone a different path, like you could have been like a UFC fighter. You could have been like a bouncer at a bar. You could have been something that just violence ensues. Uh, Offense is a little more, there's a little more art to it. It's a little chiller, I think. Maybe not the line of scrimmage, the offensive line coaches, but I think there's more of an artistic side to the offense. It's just a different vibe. Like you go into the defense, uh, Google if you forgot about this, kill the head, the body will die. That went pretty viral, and obviously the Saints got in big trouble. But how do you think? What do you think these guys talk about in these meetings, in defensive meetings? It's not usually the way offensive meetings goes as much. Not saying that they're not crazy guys on offensive side of the ball as well, but my personality, I'm just not angry enough, and I'm not violent crazy enough. Like to be a great like Vic Fangio, like he's just an angry old school SOB. Just belongs on defense. Jim Johnson was Dick LeBeau. Like you got to be Monty Kiffin. Like you got to be fucking nuts on that side of the ball. Offense is a little more like drawing plays and scoring touchdowns and high fiving. Uh, I always gravitated more toward the offense, though I probably like watching defense more. Just listen to the last podcast. How important are tangible intangibles like leadership, mentality, and work ethic in evaluating players, particularly when stats might not tell the full story? I think it makes or breaks guys in the draft. The All the stuff that you cannot measure. How much you like football, how hard you study football, how tough you are, how smart you are. And when I say smart, I don't mean like academically how good of grades you have. How your football IQ is really high. It is. I would say people do not fail in the NFL that meet the physical requirements, that have a high football IQ and are tough. They're lazy people make it. But if your football IQ is high and your talent is high, like you can make it. It's really hard. I remember Jim Washburn taught me this. He's like, you can be lazy, you can be dumb, but if you're both, we got no shot. So I just think no matter what you do, certain positions factor in. Like it's impossible to play middle linebacker if you don't know what's going on. It's impossible to play quarterback if you don't know what's going on. Safety. There's some positions you don't need to be like brilliant football IQ, like a guard, but you cannot excel at guard assuming that you have the proper strength, athleticism, arm length, all that stuff. If you're soft, like you have no shot. You will get fucking ruined. And soft, there's a big difference. Like soft in society and like football soft. Like you could be like tougher than most people, but if you're like not like your toughness, I think it's borderline impossible to not be like a 9 out of 10. You don't have to be that a wide receiver. So every position's a little different, I guess, the more I think about it. But the intangible stuff's really, really important. Question for the mailbag. When looking at running backs available in this year's draft, what's the difference in the value you see with the top five prospects? I want the Bears to take a back, but in the second or third round. Is Jeanty really that much better than the prospects like Caleb Johnson or Hampton? I would say over the next month, I'm going to look a little into that. I've watched some cut ups on Hampton. He's clearly really good. He's the North Carolina running back. Ohio State's running back is really, really good. I think a lot of people would say, like, the dude from Iowa. There are a lot of guys that you're just going to be able to get a pick like 60 or 70 or 80 that like are going to start in the NFL. I just think you look at it historically, Jeanty, I don't think he can be viewed as the same level prospect as some guys that got drafted really high recently at 5'8" and coming from Boise State. Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, or Christian McCaffrey. Let's use those three guys as an example. If you were the Bears or even the Raiders, and you told me the Raiders took Saquon Barkley or Bijan Robinson or Christian McCaffrey, I'd be like, I get it. Wouldn't love it, but I get it. This guy is not on that tier. And it feels like I'm hating on the guy. I fucking love the player. I just don't think you can take him really high. And what are the Bears drafting? 10? I do not think you can do that. And I don't think they will. I really don't. If I had to guess right now, March 23rd, things can change. I would guess he goes after pick 15. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would guess when the dust settles, I have a hard time seeing someone pull the trigger on a 5'8 running back in the top 15. Every year before the start of the season, it seems like a majority of the media covering the NFL picks the Raiders to be the worst team in the AFC West. The Chiefs obviously rule the division, but since 15, the Raiders are 500, 10 and 10. Against the Chargers and the Broncos, they're 13 and 7. The criticism we receive is well deserved. But why do we seem to take more shit than the other teams when they haven't done any better than us? With Spytek and Carroll in the building, proven coordinators in Chip Kelly and Patrick Graham, and Tom Brady now having skin in the game, who's to say that Vegas doesn't have as good, if not better, shot at getting closer to Kansas City than Denver and LA? Well, that's fair, like Brandon Staley era and some of the previous eras with Denver, that I think there were people arguing that the Raiders were better than people thought, going into seasons. I think now it's pretty hard. Listen, Pete Carroll's resume speaks for itself. At 73, he's going all in on Geno Smith against Harbaugh and Herbert, which are better, and we're just the fifth seed in the AFC. They were the fifth seed, and the Broncos, who now have Sean Payton and a quarterback. So I think that factors in now. I hear if you want to argue like when some of the previous coaches um, were running the Broncos, like the Vic Fangio era, Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh, the Raiders team just isn't that good. Like those teams were playoff teams last year. I just think Geno, tough spot. But I hear you. Like I actually think you guys got dramatically more. I don't think anyone's kicking the Raiders like they were 4 or 5 years ago. I actually think they're talked about pretty highly, myself included. Like I know Spytek a little bit, stud. I've watched Pete Carroll's career for 20 plus years. Like no one's acting. Tom Brady is best football player of all time. Clearly, just a high level guy. I think most people go, yeah, the Raiders feel a little more normal now, but they felt like that at different times. Like Mark Davis still owns the team, and shit just gets weird there a lot. You can say the same thing with the Chargers, and it usually does. And then Jim Harbaugh comes in, and then just all Jim Harbaugh does is he just wins. Chargers year one, fifth seed, boom, just like that. Question for the bag. Veach and Andy, they've invested multiple picks on the tackle position and flamed out every time. Why do teams struggle to evaluate the position? I'm going to feel like a homer here, even though I'm bet against the Chiefs. I think like 3 of the last 4 or 5 big games bet against them in AFC, in the Super Bowl with the Ravens and the Niners and the Bills this year. So I probably need to stop betting against, I don't know, guy, pretty good coach, Andy Reid, and Brett Veach, pretty good GM, and a team that just wins a lot. So I apologize to Chiefs Kingdom for constantly betting against them and just losing money because they always win. Here's the thing with the Chiefs. They draft at the end of the first round, and they have not been flush with cap space. And even if they were, like, who are you signing? Like, what are I just don't know what they're supposed to do. Like, it is very, very difficult to find a starting left tackle at pick 32 or pick 64. It's just, that's usually not where these guys are going. Look around the league. Tristan Wirfs. I go back to these guys because they're the 2 best players when healthy at their position, like Trent Williams, Lane Johnson. Like most high level tackles go really, really high in the draft. Tyron Smith forever. It's you have some outliers. Yeah, Jordan Mailata from Australia, who'd never played football in his life, right? I mean, I remember the 49ers forever, Joe Staley was an incredible pick. And he was pick like 27, I think. But he was like he was kind of like J.J. Watt of tackles. He was picked 28. That's like unheard of. to find a guy that's like going to Pro Bowls at pick 28. Usually you got to draft him pretty high. So I just think it's difficult. They're in a tough spot. They could have traded for Laramie Tunsil. Texans would have wanted their first round pick. It's like, wait, why are you trading this guy? Why? Wait, we'll give our first round pick for a player, but you're trading your left tackle when your O line sucks. I do get like Washington. It's like we'll give you third now, second later, not as hard. But it's like, hey, yeah, we want your first round pick. That's the only way we will trade this player to you. Like, it feels a little weird. We're desperate here, kind of. I mean, we're just in the Super Bowl. But it's like you're gonna make us trade a first round pick because the Texans could not have done that deal with the Chiefs, right? That they did to Washington. I think it's fair to assume that they wanted their first round pick. If you're the Chiefs, you're like, we can do our second, but our first for a guy you're trading who's gonna want $30 million a year, and like again, why are you trading him? A couple days after DK was traded to the Steelers, I read a headline along the lines of Pickens was not among the players to welcome DK at the Steeler facility. A day later, another article saying George Pickens traded rumors are picking up. My questions is if this is true, what would you trade for him? I I'm probably the wrong guy to ask because he was a second round pick. So 22, 23, 24. He's in a contract year. I I'm not in the business of George Pickens. Now, I clearly there are teams desperate enough, and for the right price, I would definitely dabble. But like, I couldn't trade anything of value. I zero chance. Like, there's a reason the guy that was that talented was picked 52nd overall. Now you watch him; he's got a lot of talent, but when the Steelers can't handle a wide receiver, n- pretty glaring sign. And I think a lot of people go, well, yeah, DK to George Pickens. This is probably George Pickens' last season on the Pittsburgh Steelers, unless he becomes a dramatically different human being. Look at the last couple guys that they were like, we're not that into. Chase Claypool, kind of out. Antonio Brown, who had like the greatest 6 year stretch of all time. Like, we're out. George Pickens, trade block. I'm not, like, there's certain people I'm just not doing business with. Like, Howie Roseman calls me. It's like, yeah, Howie, I'm not doing that trade. Billy Bean forever in baseball. Billy, I'm not that interested in. Billy, wait, you don't want our number one prospect? You want the seventh, ninth, and 15th guy? And then two of the three become all stars? Like, yeah, I probably shouldn't trade the guy Billy wants. And that's how I feel about George Pickens. I'm just like, there are certain people in a draft, and I think the good teams do this. There are players. You're like, this guy is going to be in the NFL. More than likely, he's going to be a good player. I don't want him on our team. And usually that revolves around off the field, intangible, stuff you can't quantify. The character, personality. Like, I don't want to be in business with him. Belichick made a long, long standing of doing that. Now, sometimes he did some weird draft picks because, like, who'd you just take in the second round? Like, well, his character's through the roof. It's like, Bill, that guy's a fucking undrafted free agent. So there's a balance. But there are people on every team's draft board, any team worth their salt, they're like, listen, clearly this guy's an NFL player. This guy could make a Pro Bowl, but we're not in the business of these type guys. And I think the good teams are like not now. The Steelers, they've always kind of like done a good job of reclamation projects. Sometimes it works. I think the problem is sometimes it's like a stock. You ever like strike gold and you like 10x your money, you kind of chase that forever. Listen, I'm guilty of it, and I've never had a 10x stock. But the moment you hit, 2 or 3x, you're like, damn, I want to do that again. It's like, no, just invest in Costco. Just buy some Apple. Buy something that you know is going to work. It's like, no, I'm swinging for the fences. Then all of a sudden it goes the other way. I think Dave's done that sometimes. But like that's kind of why they've maintained because their talent is always better than where they're drafting because they will take flyers. And I think the teams that stay away from that, like the Buffalo Bills, like you think Brandon Bean and Sean McDermott would mess with George Pickens? No chance, none. Like Ozzie Newsome might have, Andy Reid might, but again, like they'll pivot fast, and it's The difference is if I buy George Pickens from you for a fourth round pick, I'm not invested anymore. So it's like if he starts acting weird, I can just cut him. I'm like, yeah, I'm out. And I think it's really risky for the bad teams, like Carolina. Think of some of the bad teams that could use his talent. It's like, you want to risk this? Because George Pickens walks in like he's Randy freaking Moss. He thinks he's the best player on your team immediately. I, I would love to like have a cocktail with like TJ and Minka and Cam. And be like, what do you think of this dude? Really? No, really. Like, what do you think of this guy? Probably give you everything you need to know why you should not trade for him.